Hello? Hello?
Good evening, and thank you for joining us. Slim Sunny would like to welcome you to mindfulness, to
Hello?
Hi, sorry for the technical difficulties. Good evening, and thank you for joining us. Slim Sunny would like to welcome you to Happiness in the School Library program. Slim Sunny is a regional affiliate of the Nyla Sizzle, serving school library media specialists from Dutchess, Orange, Putnam, Rockland, Sullivan, Ulster, and Westchester counties. Before we get started, I wanted to give you a few tips. There should be a live chat available on the right of your screen. We encourage you to post your questions and thoughts throughout the presentation. There will be a brief Q&A between our presenter and the audience at the end. For our audience members who are practitioners, teachers, or administrators in New York State, this webinar is approved for CTLE hours by the New York State Department of Education. If you did not ask for CTLE ticket when you registered, please be sure to do so before the evening is over. Digital certificates will be emailed to the email address you provided. If you have not received your certificate by April 15th, please email info@slimsunny.org. There will be a number of questions posed to attendees during this webinar, and we would appreciate if everyone responded to the questions in the chat. I'm sorry, we're having some mic problems. Okay, now you can hear me. Sorry. There will be a number of questions posed to attendees during this webinar. We would appreciate if everyone responded to the questions in the chat. For those registered for CTLE hours, if you do not answer the questions at the appropriate timestamps, we cannot award the CTLE certificate. This is the only way to ensure that you are attending the event and participating. All participants will also receive a link to this recording of the webinar via email as soon as it is available. Joining us this evening is Joy Alter. Joy Alter has over 30 years experience as a freelance writer, public, school, and academic teacher librarian. This past June, she retired from Greenburgh Central School District, where she founded the Art of Happiness, an annual mindfulness program designed to offer middle and high school students strategies that place them in the driver's seat of their own happiness and well-being. She currently works in the children's department of Ossining Public Library and is training to teach yoga and mindfulness to their elementary school population. Without further ado, I am going to turn the presentation over to Joy. except that now her microphone is stuck on mute.
How about now?
Okay, there you are, Joy.
All righty. Okay. Now we're happy that we're all here being heard and being spoken or being able to speak. So in any event, back to the presentation. The Art of Happiness is a conference of workshops and assemblies, not only on yoga and mindfulness, but also art therapy, healthy relationships, diet, lifestyle. It offers a single-day program of diverse well-being strategies. Its goal is to put students in the driver's seat of their own happiness and encourage them to know that they have the power to improve their lives, despite the many factors over which they have no control. We try to expose students to a wide variety of life-improving, happiness-building strategies that are within their power to develop. Now, that is the goal of the Art of Happiness. We are basically trying to teach kids how to fish instead of giving them the fish, at least from a mental health standpoint. Whether or not happiness is a skill that can be taught to our students, just as we teach them math, music, or any other academic subject, is a question facing educators lately, and for good reason. Anxiety has increased by about 20% in children ages 6 to 17, based on recent data collected by the National Survey of Children's Health. And because anxiety interferes with successful learning, educators are motivated to find antidotes to student stress and trauma. Classroom-based yoga, the mindful school movement, and age-appropriate books on meditation and relaxation techniques are just some of the more recent trends that seek to put students in control of their own well-being. My contribution to this effort is the Art of Happiness. It's more diverse than a mindfulness program in that exposes students to a wide variety of life-improving possibilities without force-feeding them on any single one. In addition, it won't alienate students and staff who don't accept the scientific validity of mindfulness, yoga, and meditation, although it's harder and harder not to be persuaded of the value of these practices in school settings. But however your well-being program is contoured, you, the librarian, know and understand your student population, and that gives you the opportunity to tailor a happiness program and curriculum to meet the unique values, assets, and needs of the students in your care. And now just for some background on how the program came to be. I'd been a librarian for over 15 years, and I began to feel that students were increasingly distracted and unable to focus not only on academic tasks, but also leisure and social tasks and pursuits as well. They seemed to be less able to control their emotional outbursts, less able to refrain from doing and saying things that would have negative consequences. Classroom management was, in fact, becoming more difficult for me. And this was exacerbated by the fact that students were impossibly addicted to their phones, even in the classroom setting. So off to the bookstore I went to find a self-help book on classroom management for the 21st century. Of course, as a librarian, I've always turned to self-help books, commonly referred to as bibliotherapy, whether I needed advice on child raising or weight reducing, whether I needed to develop a good habit or break a nasty one. And so there I was, browsing through the many self-help titles on, adolescent angst and childhood issues. And it dawned on me that it's these kids who should be standing here in front of these self-help shelves. And it's these kids who need a little bit exposure to self-help titles. I wondered if there might be ways to encourage students to be their own self-help patrons. How could we get them to be a little bit more reflective about what was going on in that was getting in the way of positive living and what they could do about it. How do we teach our students happiness skills? Now, it turns out that I was hardly the first to ask these questions, and that the science of happiness, which is also referred to sometimes as positive psychology, has exploded over the last 10 years with thousands of book titles geared to a wide array of audiences, a lot of new and wildly popular courses, many of which are being offered at Ivy League schools. And there had also been an enormous eruption of education articles on integrating SEL, or social emotional learning, and how to get that into the curriculum. And there were so many ways that educators were integrating this new science that I had to ask myself, why not provide a taste of everything and help expose students to the many paths to better living and learning that exist? And the Art of Happiness was born. So because I think that offering this type of program is a great way for the library media specialists to enrich their roles in their school buildings, because we're librarians and we ultimately try to offer students problem-solving strategies at every milestone. I think that this is just a great program for us to kind of embrace. I believe that they dovetail perfectly with any library program. After all, you have math teachers, science teachers, and music teachers. Where is it written that librarians can't be the happiness teachers? So for the purpose of this webinar, I put together a little bit of a how-to, which I guess can be boiled down to 9 steps necessary in creating a program that is ideally and uniquely suited to your building. They're making your case, set your intention, talent scouting, plot your course catalog, Google form follows function, registration station, program promotion, D-Day, distribution, delivery and done, and then evaluations at the end. I hope that this will help people to build a program that is perfectly aligned with the needs of their buildings. But any way you tackle it, I hope that these pointers will help, and that you can start making your case for evaluating the results. Make your case. All right, this first step is pretty obvious, which is to get approval from your administrators. The program doesn't need money, but it would be great to get some. I bought along a reinforcement when I made my pitch. You could certainly pitch it alone, but I brought someone with me who I knew the administrators really liked and trusted and had a good working relationship with. And you may think that your administrators would never say no to happiness and that they would embrace the program right away, but it could be seen as a frivolous program, especially when there's so little time for academics. So when you pitch the program, you just, make sure that you're armed with statistics that underscore the connection between student success and emotional well-being. And there are so many ways to get those statistics. I have one website up here. It's from the Happiness Project. That's a picture of the subpage that is geared toward education. And so you can get a lot of articles, graphs, statistics, data, which show the alignment between, reduced trauma and improved learning. You can find plenty of things as well if you do a journal search. But you want to assure your administrative stakeholders that your program will require a minimum of financial support and provide a maximum of flexibility. And if your pitch is compelling enough, perhaps they will be willing to provide some extra money for such extras as keynote speakers, snacks, and supplies. All right, the next, once you have your approval, is your action plan, or set your intention. I start planning in September for a program that takes place at the end of April. This gives me plenty of time and doesn't overwhelm me so that I have time to do the millions of other responsibilities that I had and you're likely to have as well. So you don't want this taking over your life either. Timelines and action lists are a great way not only to start the brainstorming process, but also to build a program in a chronologically sensible order, from how to assemble a collection of workshops to when to send out your thank you notes to your presenters, committee members, and administrators. There are so many details to keep track of. And also, you don't want to do this alone. You really can't do it alone. You want to try to enlist a partner, delegate, and also invite students to be part of it as well. Now, the talent scouting is probably one of the most enjoyable components, and that's when you're really going to try to scope out possible presenters. Once the administrators are on board, then you can make your case to the teachers who will be more likely to be motivated to join your roster of workshop presenters. So we send questionnaires out that survey their skills and interests. And a school doesn't have to be comprised of master yogis and gurus, just teachers willing to share with students their own stress reduction recipes. Any given teaching staff is likely comprised of knitters, bakers, Zumba enthusiasts, gardeners, jugglers, chess masters, and any range of hobbyists at various levels of proficiency. We had our school nurse run a smoothie making and sampling workshop for a program on healthy snacking, and the only expertise required there was how to use a blender. Invite the public library, local hospitals, nonprofit organizations whose mandate is to provide free educational outreach to residents in that school's geographic catchment. For example, Woodlands Local Public Library, they ran a free workshop called Shelve Your Sorrows, which profiled popular self-improvement books and programs that the library aims at young adults. My Sister's Place is also a local Westchester nonprofit organization which aids victims of domestic abuse, and they ran presentations on, dating smarts, friendship smarts, how to maintain your friendships, how to maintain good relationships with your parents. Local hospitals often present free programs on diet, exercise, and other health and well-being topics.
If you could please take a moment to answer the following question in the chat box on the right. Who in your community might you be able to call on if planning an Art of Happiness program in your school?
All right, again, going back to talent scouting, there are limitless possibilities, and I just, wanted to throw out some of the many out there. Again, any subject that anyone has any interest in sharing or teaching or learning about can be put on your schedule. Also, consider adding a keynote assembly to your day of workshops. A keynote assembly is a great way to unify school-wide purpose, build excitement for the program, and re-emphasize the significance of why this program is being created. Again, we want to stress to our kids and teachers that this happiness business is serious. It's not a day off. We're exposing students to the strategies they can adapt to make their lives happier and more fulfilling. Now, during our keynote assemblies, we run programs on the art of hip hop, which the kids loved. We had a one-man show on adolescent struggles, which the kids loved. We had Corey the dribbler, who used basketball to teach character issues. And at my school, nothing made the boys happier than basketball. But if you don't have money for an assembly or a keynote speaker, you can work with your building, work with your school psychologists, your counselors, or anybody else to design your own keynote assembly on the art of happiness. In fact, one year we had a student, she was doing our WISE project, which is a senior capstone project, and she was interested in film. So we had her go to various teachers and administrators, particularly the really popular ones, and interview them on what they do to achieve happiness, what happiness means to them. And then we presented the film during the keynote assembly. So again, the sky, the possibilities are limitless. Above is just a few possibilities. And I'm certain you can brainstorm your own based on your building. Following are just a couple of photos of the programs that we ran over the last few years. Okay, this was a workshop on gardening that was student run. We had a student, a senior, Samantha, who had a passion for gardening. And again, this program can be a great opportunity for, your more mature students, if you're in a high school or even middle school, to share some of their passions and interests with their classmates. Of course, we always have a teacher assisting students with classroom management. And in fact, we always have two presenters for every workshop, so that one can be presenting and the other can be doing all of the administrative work, taking attendance, managing behavior. We had an origami workshop. Our Chinese language teacher ran that. We had a no gym workout offered by an English teacher who happened to be a fitness devotee. And then again, we had the Good Moods food workshops pictured in the upper left-hand corner. And in addition to making smoothies, she also administered a fun fitness quiz. This is our yoga workshop. We were able to get a little bit of money from our arts coordinator for some outside contractors. And here's our yoga teacher, who came highly recommended and highly pregnant. I guess it just proves that you can be fit and do yoga no matter your state. An interesting side note here is that one of the reasons why we named the program The Art of Happiness instead of something like Happiness 101 or Successful Happiness is because our arts coordinator, Miriam Burnaby, was able to get money from our arts and education budget, and having the title Art of Happiness helped us to get that money. Our arts coordinator was instrumental in the program's success, and we also used some arts money for the keynote assembly presentation. Again, we got some arts money from arts and education budget to hire a hip hop dance teacher. But again, the lack of money won't necessarily get in the way of running a rich multidisciplinary program. The following year, we had a teacher on staff who was a part-time Zumba instructor, and she ran a Zumba workshop. No budget necessary for that. This one was Put on a Happy Face, a workshop that also included ice cream sundaes. Every creative endeavor is always improved by food, as most educators realize. And this is a picture of our library. It's a very small library. One year we had a teacher volunteer run a bracelet making workshop in the library. And the following year we had a similar program on meditative coloring. You can get fairly cheap bookmarks and greeting cards, which the kids are able to color while classical music played in the background. And in fact, I had enough supplies left over so that I was able to establish a meditative coloring station in the library for the rest of the year. Okay. So the next step is once you've assembled your workshops, then you want to plot your course catalog. And I think of the catalog as a map to the event. It's a map not only for the teachers, but also for the students. And it will describe each of the workshops. It'll provide room numbers. It'll provide times for everything. I also wanted it to be engaging, illustrated, something that the kids would really be drawn to reading. And also we wanted the write-ups and the names to be fun and witty. So for a knitting workshop, we called it All You Knit Is Love. For yoga, we called it You Gotta Relax. You Rocks was a program on painting affirmation stones. And now the question becomes how many courses to offer. Well, you want to make sure that there are enough workshop choices to meet student registration. And it's a math problem based on your building size. But rule of thumb is you want to make sure that you can populate workshops that are no more than 20 students per workshop, and you want to give them an opportunity, depending on how you structure the program and how long the program is, you want to give kids an opportunity to do more than one workshop. So in our situation, we gave them choices for 2 workshops and a keynote address. So, and that basically took us through half day. All right. And we did our registration forms through Google Sites. So once your course catalog is completed, you can create your registration forms. Google is very flexible in the way you design it. The way we did it was we had kids list their top 3 or 4 or 5 choices, so that if their first one was no longer available, then they would at least get their second or third. And the great thing about Google Sites too is it produces this spreadsheet, which of course you can then produce Avery labels from, which will work as your kids' workshop schedules. So it's easy enough to do the Google form and to structure it the way you want, and you can do your registration after that by hand from your spreadsheet. But if you can get some help, or if you know how to code, you could write a code. My husband was an Excel whiz, and he was able to write a code that told Google software that to go through the list of students and populate the classes by choice and cap out at 20. And so it was all done automatically. Basically, this is what it looked like to the students. We described to them what the art of happiness is and how to go about making their selections. So I also wanted to mention that the logo in that particular registration form was designed by students. We ran a student competition on who could develop the best art of happiness logo. Okay, and again, as I referenced earlier, I will tell them, to select your first workshop from all of the choices below, and then below that, select your second workshop from the same choices below, and that's how we were able to determine, or to help the students determine what their first choices were. But I think that there are other ways to do this as well. But this way pretty much ended up with students getting most of their top choices. Registration station, that's the next step in your planning process. Once your forms are complete, then it's time to complete your registration, and that can be scheduled in the library with your computers, but you can also push into classes, which is what I did. In either case, it's useful to be on site with the course catalogs on hand in hard print. And during this process, you can help clear up any confusions the kids have with regard to registration, but also, and more importantly, it's a great way to promote the program, explain its purpose, and spread excitement. So I pushed into the classrooms as much as I could, and sometimes it did take an entire period. On some occasions, I had our technology teacher run the registration process, but if I had to do that, I always wanted to add something additional of my own to promote the project. So when I couldn't be on site, I created a little short iMovie for students to explain the conference, explain the idea of teaching happiness. And, but then when I could, it was more ideal to give a PowerPoint presentation that outlined the purpose of the program. If teachers didn't have the time to devote to a full period, though, you might consider presenting your PowerPoint to an entire school body at an assembly. But again, being able to push into classes to complete registration process and promote the program proves to be a really great way to expand the visibility of the library. Both students and faculty who underutilize your library program. So I wanted to just show you quickly my slide presentation that basically talked to the kids about what the Art of Happiness is. Okay, so here's a slide presentation that accompanied my visits. The Art of Happiness. The first thing I did was I had students come up with their own descriptions of happiness, and then we were able to have some conversations about happiness. What are the differences between fleeting joys, like eating ice cream, versus the more sustaining joys, like having a good friend? And obviously, there are no judgments about which is better definition of happiness, just an attempt to open up people's minds to the variety of happiness-building strategies, and to have them consider their own possible biases and assumptions about happiness. So once we had some working definitions of happiness, we were able to brainstorm some strategies that produce it. And this is a kind of fun exercise. And then in my next slide, I wanted to convey to the kids that people do believe that happiness is something that we can learn. And I told them that I had Googled how to be happy, and I came up with over 200 million sites. And I looked through each one of them, slight exaggeration, to find the best advice on how to achieve happiness. And then I showed them what I came up with. What I learned from a Harvard professor. I used the original guru of happiness, Tal Ben-Shahar is his name, who started a course at Harvard on the subject of happiness. It was one of the first, and it was the most popular course the university ever experienced. And he provided 8 easy steps to happiness after a lot of academic research. And who can argue with a Harvard professor? So here are the 8 steps to being happy. Rule 1, develop self-acceptance. Everybody's flawed, but no one can make you feel inferior without your consent. This is my favorite. Learn to focus. Do one thing at a time. And of course, you know, we're all driven mad with all of the, you know, multi-venues for social media and media overload. So the kids are really losing their ability to do one thing at one time fully and completely and devotedly. So I give them this little experiment, the 2-song experiment, and I tell them to imagine how much they love their favorite song and how great they feel when they hear their favorite song. And then imagine what it feels like to have another louder song in the background competing. How does that change your experience? Not for the better. Hence, maybe you don't do so much multitasking. Rule 3, mind-body connection. Exercise for 30 minutes, 3 times per week. And this, again, is another favorite. Rule 4. Kids always think that stress is terrible, but they fail to recognize that anyone who achieves anything in life is going to have to encounter stress. And so we've got to learn to manage it, not delete it from our lives. Stress actually can produce great things from, creative, athletic, and academic standpoint. Kids certainly know that good athletes need to stress their muscles to achieve success. So this shows that too little stress doesn't fill your brain and body. Too much stress will result in being overwhelmed and you won't be able to do anything. But stress with adequate rest and relief achieves the sweet spot. Strong bodies, strong brains, stress managed. Meditate. Now, here you can do a bit of a science lesson on what happens when your amygdala, your fight or flight portion of your brain, is in gear, producing adrenaline that produces stress and anxiety so that you are able to fight or fly. But what happens when you channel your prefrontal cortex, which is the part of your brain that makes executive decisions, censors your worst impulses, prevents you from making your worst decisions? It's interesting, Dan Harris has that book, 10% Happier, where he talks about using meditation to increase your happiness. And he makes this comment that I think is great. He says that meditation or exercising that sort of like prefrontal cortex will prevent you from saying that thing to your friend that will result in a horrible fight for 2 weeks, or, saying that thing to your wife that'll cause her to stop talking to you for 2 weeks. This idea that we have to teach the kids that they just need to slow down and think a little bit before they go off and do something they would regret. So activating your prefrontal cortex through meditation is a great, free, and proven happiness strategy. Breathe, rule 6, many breathing exercises that demonstrate to kids how to quell their anxiety. And this is just one that I use with the kids. Slowly inhale for 5 seconds, hold it for 5 seconds, slowly exhale for 5 seconds. Kids can actually feel their heartbeat slow down and feel more calmer feelings take place. Rule 7, be kind. Here's another possible activity. Write a 2-sentence letter in which you apologize to someone you were once unkind to, or write one kind thing you intend to do today. And it could be anything from holding the door open for a teacher to, helping somebody carry when they have too many books. I tell the kids that there are many challenging things. Schoolwork is challenging, relationships can be challenging, sports can be challenging, but being kind is actually easy. It's the one thing that you can do that you don't have to study for, you don't have to practice. And so whatever happens in your day, however problematic it may have been, you can always feel good that you didn't make anyone feel awful, and that you probably had more than one person today think well of you. And of course, rule 8, gratitude. There's a lot being written about gratitude. And then finally, I end with, so the Art of Happiness comes to Woodlands Middle School And then I try to connect the basic happiness strategies that I spoke of with some of the actual workshops and keynote presenters that would happen. Self-acceptance, you don't know me until you know me, was that assembly I spoke about, where we had an actor performing in the roles of various distressed adolescents. Stress no more, yoga, shelve your sorrow. So I listed the programs that would help them reduce stress. What are the mind-body connection workshops? Golf, dance. Yeah, oh yeah, we had a program called Johann Sebastian Golf, where the gym teachers taught them how to golf to classical music. Kindness. There were workshops on teamwork, care and feeding of friendships, gratitude, things like hiking and gardening, mantra art. So that's basically what I try to do in the grand finale slide.
At this time, if you could please answer the following question in the chat box on the right. What are some other ways that you can promote a program in your building and or community? If you'd also like to take this opportunity, if you have any questions for Joy, we will sit on the line for a few minutes to see what comes in on the chat, and we will come right back. Okay, Joy, one of the questions that came in was, what was your most popular program?
I don't know that I could say what was my most popular program, because different kids, every child has different interests. For some reason, we have a wooded campus, and a lot of kids wanted to do the Walk in the Woods program. So that always, and anything that involved food, pretty much filled up rather quickly.
Okay, another question came in. Did you schedule this on a Saturday or a Sunday, or was it after school? Was it a one-day program? How did your students get out of school get to the school if it was on a weekend?
It wasn't on the weekend. It was during the week. And again, the administrators had to sign off on that. And they were concerned about taking too much time. So the compromise is that we would do it for half a day, which is what we had done for the past 4 years. However, it can be changed in any way that is likely to generate the most attendance. I don't know that I would do it on a weekend. You could do it even after school. You could maybe do a series, a special workshop series on happiness, and do it out of the library once a week. Have a different speaker. So I think that there are a lot of different ways to run the program. I don't necessarily think I would do it on a weekend.
Since you held it during the school day, students who did not participate, did they go to regular classes, or were all classes canceled?
No, all classes were canceled. In 1 year, we had the schedule, instead of a 42-minute class schedule, we had like a 25-minute or 30-minute class schedule. And so everybody was required to stay at the end of the matriculated day. Nobody could go home and say, oh, well, classes are over, I want to leave early. Everybody had to stay for the end of the day.
Okay, so another question came in about lunch periods.
We did it after lunch.
Okay, so another question that came in said, oh, wow, all classes were canceled, so all students participated?
All students participated.
Right, last call for any other questions you might have. Well,
okay, so we're at the end. D-Day, distribution, delivery, and done. Students should receive their conference schedules, which can be handed out by their homeroom or classroom teachers the day of the event, just prior to the kickoff. I wouldn't give students their schedules a day before, they'll lose them. Presenters also should receive a packet of information that includes a master schedule in case anybody gets lost, their own individual workshop attendance sheets and evaluation forms. Attendance has to be taken. There were no students wandering around the building without a place to be. Presenters should be prepared to leave 5 minutes at the end of their workshop so that students and staff have an opportunity to complete evaluations. At one point I thought, oh, we don't necessarily need to do evaluations, but then it actually turned out that when we did start to do them seriously, they were really critical to the overall program planning process, since they provide important ways to generate student interest in future conferences, and also to maybe create some happiness program spin-offs for the library. So again, these are just some possibilities of program spin-offs. Maker spaces from the workshops, a library speaker series, and the staff again can be part of that, a meditation room. You could create a self-help book section. You could create some stress reduction stations, coloring station, classical music, some sort of a craft station, happiness strategy bulletin boards. You know, people can just write, you know, little notes and leave Post-its. Well-being student clubs, committees and conferences that are actually student-run. After all, if we want students to be in the driver's seat of their own happiness, then we should certainly have our students let us know what kinds of resources and strategies and, you know, life-improving guidelines they need to channel. And that's it. Thank you.
Joy, one more question came in. The question is, what was your student population?
We had 225 students in the middle school. And I felt that I had an assistant, but I felt that that was very manageable. And if I didn't have somebody to write code for me to populate all of the student schedules, I could have managed to do it by hand on my own. The following year, the program was so successful in the middle school that they wanted the high school to have their own program. And so we changed the program a little bit. We contoured it. My building, by the way, was middle school, high school building. And when that happened, I had to get somebody to basically do most of the high school programming, because it can become a lot of work if, you know, you don't have a reasonable sized building.
Great. So Joy's contact information is shared on the screen in front of you. jalter@wlsmail.org or joycalter@gmail.com. I will not read her phone number out loud. However, you can read it off the screen. Thank you for attending the webinar. If you have any additional questions, please feel free to contact Joy or the Slim Sunny administrators. If you have asked for a CTLE certification, you should receive it by April 15th. Certificates will not be provided to those who watch this webinar as a recording or for those who did not interact at all in the chat area. Thank you very much, and the webinar is now over.
Thank you.